Just a second. And don't, and I hear her. Gab, are you in?
I'm here.
I can hear you. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been an angel in so many ways the past few weeks, and we so appreciate all that you're doing to help us. And so glad that you're here because you do really important research, and we want the world to know about your research. So thank you for being here to share it with us. So we have met Gab several years ago, and she's in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and she came out to lobby with us in DC, and then we had the conference in Salt Lake City last year, and she was so incredibly instrumental in putting the whole thing together, and we would not have been able to have the location that we had for it to go off as well as it did if it was not for her. So, and she's a medical advisor on our charity. She does so much for our kids, not just the kids and that she works with, you know, with samples in Utah in her lab, but everywhere. And we really appreciate you, Gab. So I'm going to let you talk about your genetic research and what you do there.
Okay. Nice to see you, Dawn. So I have a lab in the University of Utah, and we have been working on CDH for about 8 years. And we do it sort of in 2 ways. So the one thing that we do first off is we use mice. So mice, just like humans, have a diaphragm. And so we can make genetic manipulations to the mice based on mutations that we see in humans. So we can figure out from looking at the mutations, well, we can look at genes that have been implicated by human studies and see whether they really give rise, whether mutations in those genes give rise to CDH. So we've made lots of mice that have diaphragmatic hernias. And then because we know that the pregnant mice will give rise to pups that have diaphragmatic hernias, we can look and see how those diaphragmatic hernias arise using the mice. And then because we can see, we can watch the hernias arising, we can start to look at what specifically is going wrong in the development of the diaphragm. So that's what we've done. A lot of work is basically modeling how diaphragms form normally and what goes wrong in CDH. And then in addition, we've also been doing a lot of collaborative work with other CDH research labs. So we've worked with Wendy Chung, and we've worked with Pat Donahoe and Shin Sun and Kate Ackerman, looking at human genetic data to try to understand the complexity of how CDH arises in humans. And that's, you know, part of the real challenge is that it's not like a disease like cystic fibrosis or Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is caused by mutations in a single gene. CDH is caused by many different kinds of combinations, many different mutations in many different genes, and many combinations of mutations. So our work and lots of other people's work has implicated probably over 100 different genes. And, you know, and that sort of explains some of the complexity of what a pregnant mother is facing when they have a diagnosis of diaphragmatic hernia, is that you can get, a baby could get a mutation in CDH via many different mechanisms. And the idea is if we had some idea what the underlying mechanism is, maybe we could make some predictions about how we could treat the babies. And maybe we could understand, oh, this baby is likely with this mutation to have a really severe lung problem. And so we would do something differently than if the baby had a different kind of mutation. So, and because it's so complex, it really can't be one lab. It has to be many labs. And so I think the community of researchers is really trying to work together to figure this out. So
you're doing
maybe
a
I could.
you're
Whoops,
doing a
I have my.
great job of working with the other labs. It's wonderful to see everybody collaborating like you do. And I am not able to see all the questions as they pop up. I don't know if you, I don't think you are, because they're on the page and we're on the back end. But I wanted to talk a little bit about your lab, your whole team. We toured it last year when we were in Utah, which was amazing. The kids were just,
The kids were great.
bedazzled. They were great. Looking at the microscopes, seeing all of the mice parts is pretty darn cool when you're a kid, and pretty cool when you're an adult too.
Sort of almost surreal about seeing these kids who had diaphragmatic hernias looking at mice who had diaphragmatic hernias and realizing that they were seeing, what was happening to them or had happened to them, right? Because these are really young mice.
Yeah. And be able to meet the lab workers there who work every day to fight CDH is wonderful. And we're so grateful that we were able to take that tour. Because to hear the researchers talk about their research is one thing, but to see the actual research and where you work, it makes the researchers less abstract, if that makes sense. Just like I hope that for the lab workers, seeing the families makes the patients less abstract too. So
and I think it's certainly really motivating for us because we're working extremely long hours, and so there's a graduate student, there's a postdoc, there's a couple of technicians who are all working on this. And, it can feel like you're alone working in a lab. A lot of times, especially some of the culturing work we're doing at crazy hours of the night. And it's hard to be in a dark room, looking at a microscope at 1 a.m. and, keep up this is really useful, right? So it's really nice to see the families.
It is very useful. Everything that you do is a step closer to solving this really awful puzzle that is CDH, and another step closer to doing some gene therapy, hopefully sometime soon, so that we can stop this. And to pick a topic like CDH when you have no family connection to it and go, this is something I want to solve, is just incredible to us on this side to have someone say, I want to help these kids, when you have no obligation to do so, except you just want to help our children. And CDH is the thing that you want to focus on. And we're so very grateful to you for that. And because really without your lab and without Dreams and Mass General, we have no hope to stop this. We really don't. So you give us that, and that's a very big deal. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Of course.
So what can families do to participate in your research if they're not there? Now, you collaborate and you share samples with the other labs. So
so I would say actually for patients, the best way is so we actually have decided not to collect any human samples because it just didn't make sense. I feel, we felt like that, in particular, we've been working a lot with Wendy, or Pat, but there's several other groups. So there's also the group at Baylor that are well equipped to be gathering samples. We don't need, there's no reason for us in particular to grab the samples. So for instance, when people came to the meeting over the summer in Utah, it was actually Julia, who was from Wendy's lab, who, drew blood samples. And so that's certainly really, really helpful. And we do help. So we've been analyzing samples in collaboration right now with Wendy's lab, that she has a particular type of sample that is really special, hard to get at. And so, you know, I would really encourage people to, I mean, I think I'm not sure if I'm getting all of the groups, but in the US, I think of Dreams, which is Wendy Chung, and
Yes.
Pat Donahoe, which is MGH. And then who's collecting the samples at Baylor? Is it Daryl Scott? I'm not sure who it is.
I don't think it's Daryl anymore. I think he's looking at something else, and there's someone other than him. And I can't recall their name because I just found that out about a month ago. But,
right. But those are the three main groups, I think, that are collecting samples. For sure, people can email me and I can send you the contact information. But definitely to participate is really wonderful. So if you, I mean, and the idea is to get samples from the parents and from the child or the adult is the most helpful thing. That gives us the most insights. And of course, if you, if there's more than one person in your immediate family or extended family, that's particularly powerful because that gives us more pieces of the puzzle to look at to try to figure out which particular genes are playing a role. And so if you're, you know, in the unfortunate situation where you've had more than one child, or you've had a cousin who's had CDH, your family is particularly useful just because then we can try to figure out what's the common denominator, let's say, between the two different children. Because it's likely to be, you know, it may be linked, it may not be linked, but that's particularly useful. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have one of the volunteers post the link to your website for your lab so the families can learn more about your research and see a lot of the slides that you have on there. So much more than we can cover in a few minutes. But is there anything, last thing that you would like to add, Gab?
Well, I guess I invite anybody who's in Salt Lake who's interested in seeing the lab. We're always open to having people come. You know, send me an email. It's better if you give us a couple days notice, but even if you happen to be in primary children's getting a checkup, you know, send an email. And you can just, you know, we're a few-minute walk from a primary children's. So you're absolutely welcome to come and see the lab, just to demystify it, right? And we always love having people come. And I really thank the families for how great they've been at sharing information and really, I guess, keep in mind that you have lots of information. Your experience is really, really helpful. I've learned a lot of things from talking to families that I had no idea about from just reading, you know, just doing the science or reading the literature. So know that your experience is really useful to a scientist, as well as, of course, you know, sharing with other family members and, you know, all the other things. But yeah. And we're extremely grateful to the charity for everything they do. And to you, of course.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're very much grateful for you. There's so many different things that you have done the past few years to steer the charity, new directions to help more families. And we so appreciate that. And I hope to see you again soon. Hopefully we'll get you out at the conference next year, wherever we figure out where that's going to be, somewhere on the East Coast. But we'll talk soon, Gab. Thank you so much. You have a great night.
Okay, same to you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we are going to go directly into talking